5 African presidents meet the US president. Headline should follow. But this time, it wasn't just a handshake or the settings. It was the silence, the angles of the camera, and the shadows. Gabon, Liberia, Senegal, Mauritania, and Guinea-Bissau sat at the table. But who really held the power? These were not just any African leaders. They represented 5 nations at crossroads politically, economically, and diplomatically. Gabon, newly under transitional military rule, seeking external legitimacy, and Liberia, with a new president, Joseph Boakai, navigating fragile reforms. Senegal just completed a peaceful democratic transition led by Bassirou Diomaye Faye. To Mauritania, a Sahelian state crucial in regional anti-terror efforts. Guinea-Bissau, state politically unstable but strategically located on the West African coast. Trump teams choose these nations carefully, not for what they are now, but for what they control: minerals, ports, youth, and geopolitical space. The image released after the meeting wasn't just poorly staged, it was symbolic. Trump stood visible, but the African leaders almost hidden. And this explains why back camera placement, placing Africa out of visual dominance. Trump at the center, wall late, no press conference, no bilateral summaries, no African photographer coverage. This composition screamed Trump in control, Africa in the background. That wasn't a coincidence. It was the narrative control. Donald Trump doesn't meet leaders for ceremony, he meets them for advantages. So what's the true motive behind this closed-door gathering? Trump's motive was 1. Undermining Biden's African diplomacy, and 2. Securing pre-election symbolic alliances, 3. Privately discussing access to real minerals, 4. Countering Chinese and Russia influence in the region. Trump isn't backing down, but he is positioning himself. He wants Africa to serve as a quiet support to his image of global leadership. But in a moment when most were quiet, Gabon's president, General Brice Oligui Nguema, stood up, not for himself, but for the African. But before we dive into Gabon's bold response to Donald Trump, let's look at a consecutive way of how Donald Trump was surprised at Liberia's President English, and that is a red flag.
Thank you. It's such good English, such beautiful. Where did you learn to speak so beautifully? Where were you educated? Where? Liberia. Yes. Well, that's very interesting. It's beautiful English. I have people at this table can't speak nearly as well.
His English is very good, Donald Trump said with a smile, referring to Liberia's President Joseph Boakai during their recent private meeting. It seems like a compliment, harmless to some, but across Africa, it hit a nerve. Why? Because when a former US president praises an African leader's command of English, it echoes an old colonial whisper: "You speak well for an African." Trump reportedly said President Boakai speaks very good English, very impressive, during a brief exchange. But here is the truth. English is Liberia's official language. It's what President Boakai grew up speaking. So why the act surprise? In this scenario, it's like complimenting a French president for speaking good French. It reveals a deeper bias that African competence is unexpected. Across social media, Africans weren't celebrating. They were insulted. Is English the measure of leadership now? We don't need grammar approval from colonizers. Boakai's English is not a gift from the West. It's a post-colonial inheritance. Imagine a Chinese leader being praised for speaking Mandarin. It's absurd, but when it's Africa, sadly, we must prove we are literate. It's degrading. So, what was Trump really doing? This wasn't just a compliment. It was classic, soft power branding, subtitled dominance in hidden praise. It frames Boakai as acceptable to the Western world. It implies other African leaders are less educated. It positions Trump as a teacher who rewards their student. It was performative. Trump was signaling this African leader is one of the good ones. That's dangerous label in global politics. Let's be clear, President Bokai's intelligence does not rest on English. Africans' value is not tied to fluency in colonial tongues, and praise that centers language over policy, dignity, and sovereignty is not praise at all. Africans need compliments about their ideas, their innovation, and their courage, not their accents. Why do you think this compliment sparked a huge anger? This is because in African diplomacy, praise from the wrong source at the wrong time isn't respect, it's red flag. On the surface, it was ordinary diplomacy, but to the African audience, this meant something deeper. Trump rarely praises African leaders publicly. When he does, it usually follows a strategic goals. But during that absurd meeting, something strange occurs. A lot of people were asking, why these 5 African countries? Why they left Nigeria, South Africa, Egypt, and the rest powerful nations in Africa? But just to see these 5 African countries, it was a moment that raised more questions than answers. In a private meeting between Donald Trump and 5 African presidents, Gabon, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, and Mauritania, these 2 giants were notably missing. No Nigeria, no South Africa. Why? Was it a snub, a strategy, or something deeper? When we come to Nigeria, Nigeria is Africa's most populous nation, largest economy, and regional powerhouse. So, why was it excluded? The answer is complex. Nigeria is not easily swayed. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's administration has shown mixed signals towards U.S. interests, balancing between the West, China, and BRICS-aligned nations. With widespread insecurity in the north and internal resistance to foreign military expansion, Nigeria isn't viewed as a quick-win partner for USA geopolitical setups. Trump's camp allegedly wanted discreet access to critical resources like gas and solid minerals. Nigeria's bureaucracy, media, and civil society make such quiet deals difficult. Nigeria doesn't do secret backdoor diplomacy easily. You can't meet Nigerian officials quietly. Someone will leak it, and the oppositions will protest. That's not the kind of clean PR Trump wanted. And to South Africa, the most industrial nation on the continent, a member of BRICS and a major voice on global diplomacy. Under Cyril Ramaphosa, South Africa has pursued non-aligned and open criticism of Western hypocrisy on issues like Palestine and Russia. That doesn't sit well with Trump's worldview. Remember the fallout in 2018 when Donald Trump tweeted about land seizures in South Africa. Relations were tense then and they remained uneasy now. The recent ICJ case filed by South Africa over Israel's actions in Gaza put Pretoria on a direct coalition course with US consecutive policies for Trump. This would be a political liability. So, you don't invite a nation that sued your closest ally to a quiet backroom meeting where diplomacy is transactional. So, you may be thinking, why Gabon, Senegal, Guinea-Bissau, Mauritania, and Liberia? Because they are cuter, more maneuverable, and geopolitically useful right now. No strong media backlash if deals are made. Military cooperation possible with little oversight. Resource rich but politically vulnerable. Not too aligned with Russia or China yet. Trump wasn't seeking Africa's biggest voices. He was seeking Africa's most reliable openings. But is African asleep? The youth are watching. The press is watching. And giants like Nigeria and South Africa may not have been invited, but their absence speaks louder than any handshake. When you plan for Africa without her strongest voices, you are not building a future. You are drawing a trap, and Africa won't walk into it. But in the same closed-door meeting with Donald Trump, a voice echoed, a voice rise not for himself, but for African, based on inside sources. It said, if we were equals, then let us be treated equally. If this room is for power projection, we will not be props. These are the words of the Gabon president, Nguema. Nguema reportedly demanded a clearer joint statement, a better visual setups, and transparency in agenda, cutting short what others saw as pure optics. It was risky but necessary. It was one of the few moments where an African leader rejected silence for self-respect. In Africa, the reactions were sharp. Why were they silent? Why no African journalists present? Why let Trump dominate the visual story? Some said, you don't meet a man who insulted our continent without clarity. We must stop allowing ourselves to be used for campaign photos. Meanwhile, US conservative outlets used the images to promote Trump as a global statesman once again. For Gabon's president, he didn't go there as a beggar, he went there as a partner. He made it clear that the era of free transporting and of raw materials has ended. So if Donald Trump or the USA is going to make a deal with them or partner with them, they have to partner with them on a normal basis, win to win. It's not win to win, they can go. Other countries are interested in partnering with them, and this sends a shockwave across the internet and even Africa and beyond. The lesson is clear. If Africa doesn't take control of the camera, the story will always belong to someone else. Always demand equal visibility. Insist on neutral agenda transparency. Never attend symbolic meeting without clear deliverables. Speak up like Gabon did when dignity is at risk. Africa is not a stage for anyone's campaign. It's a continent of people, purpose, and presence. And from Gabon to Guinea-Bissau, a message was sent. Africa sees, Africa speaks, Africa chooses its future, with or without you. What do you think about the present deal with Donald Trump with the 5 African presidents, and what Gabon's president would respond to Donald Trump? What do you think about it? Do you think Africa is challenging their strength towards a new path like the AES, the alliance of the Sahel state? Do you think Captain Ibrahim Traoré has opened a way for African leaders to walk that path? If you think so, drop your own opinion in the comment section, and thank you for watching this channel.